Hey guys, so in today's video we're going to be going over what a dictionary is within Python. And for those that do not know, dictionaries are often used to call keys and values. And what I mean by that is, for example, if we have a traditional dictionary and if we decide to look up the word octopus, below the word octopus, it'll have the dictionary definition of what an octopus is. So within Python, what octopus would be is octopus would be the key, octopus, and then the definition would be considered a value. So dictionary definition of the word. So that's just kind of the basics of dictionaries within Python. Often, though, the variable, whenever you see dictionary in the wild, it'll go ahead and be the variable will be considered dict, and there'll be equals to, and then you'll have curly brackets, and within the curly brackets, you'll have whatever the definitions might be. For example, octopus is actually the key, and then likewise, the value would be the definition of whatever the octopus would be. What I actually have established for us right now is the variable forest, and I went ahead and assigned forest different values and keys and whatnot. So for those that were kind of paying attention, what would this be considered right here? The word trees. Well, if you've already guessed it, trees would actually be considered the key. Now, keys are separated from values with a colon, and then the values follow that colon and can be strings. They can also be integers, and likewise, they could also be a list of items within, the items themselves. So if hypothetically you wanted to be able to gather an item from the forest dictionary right here, what we have established, what you could do is you could go ahead and do print. And then within print, we could do forest. And then if we were to go ahead and print that, we would go ahead and have the entire dictionary printed out. Now, let's say hypothetically that we want to be able to call the value of whatever it might have been within the dictionary. Like, for example, if we want to have our big oaks printed out, what we could do is we could do brackets right here, square brackets, and within the square brackets, we could go ahead and type in trees. And then once we print trees, we would have our big oaks. Now, within Python, if you also wanted to use it, what you could do is you could change trees into a integer. For example, we'll just go ahead and use 1. And if we want to update this to have it called, what we would need to do is we need to do 1. And we'd again have our big oaks printed out. The point is, though, is that the keys themselves don't actually need to be strings. They could also be integers, like 1, like what we just did. Another method that you could use to go ahead and call values within the dictionary itself is, rather than using the brackets right here, what we could do is we could go ahead and use a .get method, and the get method would allow us to be able to gather information from items within the dictionary itself. So for example, let's say we want to gather flowers. What we do is we could do .get, and then we go ahead and type in the flowers, and we go ahead and print that, and we get the list of items right here. Now let's say we want to actually call Cosmos within that list of items. What we could do is we could do .get, and then we could do the brackets, and within those brackets we could do 1, and then if we were to print that, we would get Cosmos. Now remember, in Python we start at 0, we go 0, 1, 2, and the same will be for lists, just for counting upwards in general. Before I move on, though, what you could also do is, if you want to say, for example, call Cosmos again, we could also do the brackets like what we did before, and then we could just type in flowers, and then we would do .1, or the brackets .1, and then we'd also get Cosmos printed out. So just know you could either use .get or you could use brackets to go ahead and call the items within the dictionary itself. So let's actually say hypothetically that we wanted to be able to call an item within the dictionary and check to see if it actually exists or not. One way of doing it would be using the brackets right here, which is what we already have established set up. And we could go ahead and say, let's say we're looking for shrubs to go ahead and see if shrubs is a key within the dictionary itself. We could go ahead and run that, but we'll get an error if we run it and if it obviously doesn't exist. And now that could kill our code. One way, though, of getting around this, of receiving the error, is rather than using brackets, what we could do is we could do the get method, and within get, we'd be able to see if it exists or not. So if we run this, what we would get in return was none. Now, none is being returned only because obviously nothing exists, but let's say hypothetically we wanted our code to keep running, whatever the script might have been that we're running, and we wanted instead of none to be printed out. What we could do is we could do a comma, and then within the second part of the method, we could go ahead and call a string. For example, shrubs are bushy things. And if we were to run that, what we get is that we wanted shrubs, and then we're getting the value returned for our bushy things. Likewise, we'd also be able to return, rather than just a string, and we could also return an integer, and then so on. So the same rules still apply if you're using the .get method and you wanted to have something else returned that was not something other than none. Now, let's say hypothetically that shrubs actually does exist within the dictionary forest. So let's actually go ahead and add that. So let's say that shrubs actually exists, but it has a value that we don't actually want. So we just have like a bunch of gibberish typed out, right? If we wanted to, we could go ahead and either use the method that we just did, and then we said our bushy things, or what we could do is we could go ahead and call forest up here, and then in brackets we go ahead and say shrubs, and then we could have them equals to the values that we want them to be equal to. And now if we were to actually print forest, and we'll go ahead and comment this out. So if we actually printed forest, what we would get is the updated version of shrubs or bushy things. Shrub. Oh, it actually looks like I made a bit of an error when I ran the program right here. I misspelled the word shrubs, so let's go ahead and change that back to shrubs. And then let's go ahead and run the code again. And it's updated. Sweet, right? So we're able to update the values within a dictionary by assigning a new value to the key itself. And so just kind of like as another follow-up to this example, if, for example, we want to say update trees, what we could do is we could do, again, forest, and we could do trees. And then within that, we could go ahead and say that trees are equal to giant pine trees. And so if we were to print this one out again, what we get is we get the updated version of what trees would be. So this is one way of also being able to update values within the dictionary. So now that we actually know how to update a single value within a dictionary, let's say hypothetically that you guys actually wanted to be able to update the entire dictionary or even a portion of the dictionary. What you could do is, instead of using the .get method, what we could do instead is we can use a .update method, and within the update method would actually be a dictionary. So let's establish dictionary. And for example, what you could do with this is you could establish trees, which is a key, and then we'll go ahead and say trees, instead of them being oaks, we'll just say pine trees. And then let's also say, since we still have gibberish, that's shrubs as gibberish, we'll go ahead and update shrubs to bushy things. And then let's actually add another value on top of all this. So let's go ahead and let's add animals. And then with that, we'll go ahead and say deer. So now that we have that forest updated, let's go ahead and get rid of this. If we were to go ahead and run what the forest updated would be, is we go ahead and print forest. And then we go ahead and get the updated version of the forest. So up here you see the difference. Trees are big oaks, and down here you'll say pine trees. And then likewise we have gibberish for shrubs. whereas for shrubs we have bushy things. And then we went ahead and also added animals and deer to the dictionary itself. So if you want to update multiple, just remember that you could do .update, and then you'll pass in a dictionary, and then this dictionary will go ahead and update the proper values for the proper key. And finally, if you actually wanted to say get rid of an item within the dictionary itself, is rather than doing .update, what we could do is we could add the del keyword, and del would allow us to delete anything that we choose within the dictionary. So for example, if we want to say delete trees, go ahead and add forest to that. Forest. If we were to print the new forest, what we would get is we get bird, flowers, shrubs, still gibberish, but we wouldn't actually have trees because we went ahead and deleted that. So if you do use delete, just be cautious because it will delete obviously what you select and tell it to delete. So just be certain to double check when using the del keyword. And so a final thing to keep in mind though is when dealing with keys and deleting them and removing their values and whatnot is instead of also using del, the del keyword, what we could also do is we could use pop. So what I mean by pop is, for example, if we want to say, let's remove trees. We saw say trees are equal to forest.pop, and then we'll go ahead and remove trees. And what this will do is it'll remove trees from the dictionary right here. But also what happens is we'll be able to print the value of trees, which should be our big oaks. And what I mean by this is we're popping off trees, the key, and below it, we're kind of catching it with this variable. And then we're going to be able to print out the value of what the key trees is. So if that makes sense, we have the key, we're popping off the value, and then we're going to go ahead and catch it and call it right here. And likewise, we're calling the forest dictionary right here. When it comes to dictionaries, you can either call the items themselves. And what I mean by that is, for example, if we want to go ahead and print how many keys are in the dictionary, we could use the len function, and then we could call the forest right here, the dictionary. And what this will do is it'll go ahead and print out how many keys we have. So we've got 4 keys with trees, birds, flowers, and then shrubs. And likewise, instead of doing that, what we could do is, let's say hypothetically we wanted to be able to see the keys. We'll have only the keys printed out. What we could do is we could do print forest dot keys, and what that will do is I'll go ahead and print out each of the dictionary keys that we have within our own dictionary. And if you want to say hypothetically be able to print the values instead of doing dot keys, we could do dot values. And if we were to run that, we would go ahead and return the values of the dictionary. And then finally, if we actually wanted to be able to return both the keys and the values, what we could do is we could do dot items. And that will go ahead and print out the entire dictionary as pairs in a tuple, if you will. So just kind of as a recap, if you want to go ahead and call the keys, what you'll do is you'll do dot keys, and you'll go ahead and call the keys. Or if you want to call the values, you'll do dot values, and you'll go ahead and get that. And then finally, if you want to do the items, you do dot items, and then we'll go ahead and get both the keys and the values. And so finally, to kind of mix and blend everything together, if you wanted to be able to say loop through each of the items, each of the key and the values within the dictionary, what you could do is we could create a for loop. And a for loop will be for keys, values, because we're calling both of those, in forest dot items, because we want to get both of the items. And then we're going to go ahead and print both the keys and the values. And so if we were to actually go ahead and print this out, the for loop, what we would get is we would get keys with the values being looped through each of the items within the dictionary. So hopefully this makes a little bit of sense. I would totally understand if it doesn't because it's quite a bit of information to take in one sitting. If you like, please feel free to practice with this code. It'll be in the GitHub that I have below. And likewise, I'll go ahead and link another YouTube video which inspired me to create this YouTube video. The individual that created it is Corey, and he's actually a really, really good instructor. I would highly recommend you guys checking out his YouTube videos. Anyways, so thanks for checking out this video, you guys. Hopefully you'll find value in it, and then hopefully you'll check out some of my other videos where I do go into Python programming and teach more about Python. So thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.